have already posted this morning sight interpreting. Always interpreters, especially simultaneous interpreters I'm talking about, not community interpreters, they tend to be, they need to be knowledgeable in various areas, especially if they are simultaneous interpreters, because they need to be up to date with the current affairs, with topics that are of great interest in political area or political field, as well as maybe in business, or it could be also in environment. So that's basically, you have to be interested in this kind of areas when you are starting to do interpreting. One of the problems that are that can actually be related to interpreting in particular, and the challenges in interpreting, is to do with the terminology. And terminology comes along only when you are actually familiar with some of the stories or the background or the context in which these terminologies are used. It is if you are not familiar with these, then I don't think you will be able to memorize this terminology, because you need to know how these terms are used, specialized terms are used in specific context, because sometimes such, for example, acronyms or abbreviations or concepts actually even are actually what they are and how you are going to phrase them in another language. So there's quite a lot of information that you need to grasp and get to things to sink into your head in order to use them in such an easy way, and they need to come up to your head quite, jump into your mind when you are interpreting straight away, rather than just think and go with and and fillers or what they call fluffs in recordings. You don't need that. You need to be a good, confident interpreter. Now, I'm focusing on interpreting in the political field, basically because most of the simultaneous interpreters, when they go to conferences, to attend conferences, most of the time these conferences are of a political nature, and you need to know about the actual guests in this conference and what's their background. You need to look at their, if there are any recordings, YouTube or whatever. So you need to really be familiar. You need to familiarize yourself with the speakers and with the content and the topic that you are after. Now, as it has become like almost like a tradition in my case, that every day in the past week, as you've seen in the political translation 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and 6 videos that I have recorded, I did use sight interpreting in a way, because I was looking at the text and trying to interpret it straight away or translate it straight away verbally, in other words, orally. And this is something that you need to be aware of, that you are to be familiar with this kind of technique of sight interpreting. Now, of course, I'm not listening to a video to interpret now, and you cannot do that straight away. You need to be familiar with the environment in which you are in. Now, political translation and political texts, you need to be familiar with them in order to develop your skill further, and be able to be confident enough to actually produce or output in the target language, which is your English or your Arabic, whichever the target language is, as comfortable as possible and as confident as possible. And this is really a very, very important matter. Now, I have looked at some of these newspapers online on a daily basis, so that I can show you that you have to be up to date and you have to be ready for any of these new stories so long as you're familiar with their background or their context, and familiar with their expressions. Let's just look at the New York Times, for example, this afternoon or today, what they have to say in terms of stories, and maybe we can pick up a couple of stories, and then I will interpret them for you, and then you can have a look at sight interpreting and how it works. Of course, it's not going to be like a written translation. It will be more or less a verbal, oral outputting, like in interpreting. Let's have a look at the stories available. Now here we have, in the New York Times, we have a story about Democrats stay televised hearing or see televised hearings as way to highlight January 6th revelations. Here إذا يتابع الديمقراطيون أو من حزب الديمقراطيين جلسات الاستماع المتلفزة كأسلوبا أو طريقة لإبراز ما ظهر في يناير السادس من يناير. Let's have a look. It might be relating to, it could be gun control or something related to that. I'm not sure, but let's have a look. Okay, it's here. It's actually blocking me because I'm accessing it online. I should have taken that story straight away and copy and pasted it somewhere so I can then do that. I mean, that is one of the problems when you are looking at something like this. They will have lots of, excuse me, lots of blocking me because I'm not contributing. I'm just sort of browsing through. So that's why I am not some of these adverts that are appearing in there. Let me just go back and see whether I can get hold of the first story and maybe get it into a copy and paste it just to see what's inside that story so that I can help with the sight interpreting of that. I mean, that is a story which has just been appearing today online in the copy of the online. Right, here we go, and let's see. It's here we can see we have to know something about the two parties, Democrats and Republicans, الديمقراطيون والجمهوريون, and there is a kind of tension going on between them, as we know. We need to know something about the political stage or arena and what's happening, so that you can see what's being talked about. Now here we can just say, okay, let's have a look, and that is about the mob or the supporters of Donald Trump who have been stormed the Capitol, Capitol Hill. الذين دخلوا إلى Capitol Hill وحطموا بعض. So إذن look at this. 17 months after a mob of Donald Trump's supporters stormed the Capitol with false claims of a stolen election. بعد 17 شهرا من دخول عصبة من الناس يساندون أو من مؤيدي دونالد ترامب جي ترامب دخلوا إلى كابيتول هيل وبادعاءات مزيفة عن أنه تمت سرقة الانتخابات. فيخطط ديمقراطيون هاوس ديمقراتس يخططون في المجلس يخططون أن يستخدموا landmark set of investigative hearings، أن يضعوا مجموعة من جلسات الاستماع التحقيق والتحقيق بداية هذا الأسبوع في محاولة لإعادة تركيز انتباه المقترعين في 6 يناير، والهادفة إلى ربط الديمقراطيين مباشرة بمؤامرة غير مسبوقة تضعف من الديمقراطية نفسها. So as you can see here in this form or in this story, I need to know a little bit about the history, about what happened at that time when they stormed the capital, and who are the Democrats and who are the Republicans. So this is what's important about you as an interpreter. You need to be up to date with the events that are available here. I'm just going to see if there is any other. Here's another one. I mean, here is just a title. I'm not going to go into details in it. It says here, the bottom story, it says, Proud Boys charged with sedition in Capitol attack. إذن الأولاد الفخورين بأنفسهم، طبعا كلمة sedition معناها فتنة، ينطلقون حتى لإحداث فتنة في هجومهم واقتحامهم لكابيتال، مبنى الكابيتول. ننتقل إلى, for example, here is about Ukraine. Again, we find potential weapons reach Ukraine faster than they know how to use them. إذن الأسلحة potent، أسلحة مرة ثانية يتم الإعلانات تظهر. فإذا هنا بالنسبة لهذا this story here we have إذن الأسلحة الفتاكة أو الفعالة تصل إلى أوكرانيا أسرع من معرفة كيفية استخدامها من الناحية الفنية. إذن هذا خبر آخر. ننطلق إلى أي خبر. فإذا كما نرى، يعني I'm not gonna spend too much time on this, but you can see that it is quite an easy thing once you know the context in which this story is, and the same applies when you are in a conference. You need to know the context in which such an event is happening, or what the topic is about, and you need to update yourself with the terminology as well. And that is both terminology in Arabic and in English. So always read in Arabic and read in English at the same time. So don't assume that you know all the words in Arabic or all the words in English, all the terminology in Arabic and all the terminology in English. So as I did in the translation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, the political translation videos, you need to do the same in terms of looking at the text and trying to sight interpret it into your own language, and in the case of my language, which is Arabic. Have a nice day.